Well, folks, I think all the squirrels finally escaped from my Honda ATC 110 fat tire conversion bike. It's getting to the point where I'm really smoking out anybody who's riding behind me, and it's having problems downshifting into first gear, so it's definitely time for a rebuild. Luckily, I've got another, even smokier engine sitting in this guy, but this one shifts great, so let's tear it down and see what's lurking inside. But before I tear the top end of the engine off, I want to plug up the intake and exhaust ports and give the engine a little bath just to make sure no chunks of dirt fall inside when we start taking everything apart. And would you look at that? All the seals look to be in really good shape and there's not a drop of oil anywhere. Nice. Think we got a good one. Now let's grab the pressure washer and clean this guy up. There we go. I think the engine was taken good care of when it was running, but I think it just sat outside too long, it got seized up, and I broke one of the piston rings off when I was trying to get it unstuck. I guess we're going to find out soon enough. Now that the 20-year-old oil is drained out, let's pull the pulse generator cover off and see how everything looks inside. I have to bolt that down later. The first thing we gotta do is take these two little Phillips screws off, and then the pulse generator assembly should slide right out. Ah, look at that. The spark advancer springs are broken. I guess I'm going to have to order some new ones. I think this outer lobe can fit into the rest of the assembly in both directions, so be sure to mark it with some paint or something before you take it apart, because if you put it in backwards, your ignition timing is going to be 180 degrees out of whack. Now be sure to note there's a little timing pin in the camshaft that makes it so you can only slide the spark advancer on in one direction. So grab a magnet or something and make sure the pin doesn't fall out and you lose it somewhere down in the engine. Hey, there it is. And it's gone. Guess I'm going to go fishing for it with a magnet. And before I get too carried away, let's get everything organized into some tubs so I don't lose track of where everything goes. Now let's take these two bolts off and pull out the camshaft. Now I've got the engine situated like this so we can keep tension on the cam chain so it doesn't slip off or skip a tooth on the sprocket inside of the engine case. I also took a paint marker and drew a line across the cam chain and the cam gear, so in theory when I'm reassembling everything, I should be able to line up the paint marks on the cam chain and the cam sprocket, and the cam timing will be correct. When you're taking the cylinder head cover off, make a note that one of those lower nuts is a dome nut with a copper crush washer. Be sure to put that nut and copper washer back in the original location because there's an oil passageway along that engine stud, and if you put it back together without the right nut or washer, you're going to have a floor covered in oil when you go to start the engine up. Ask me how I know. Now let's use a little caution when removing this cam roller pulley. I kept some tension on the chain whenever I was moving things around, just to make sure the chain didn't slip off or jump a tooth on the sprocket inside the engine case. When you're gently pulling the cylinder off, please make note of the locations of these little guide pins so you can get them back in the correct location when you start reassembling the engine. and there should be pins on both the bottom and the top of the cylinder. Now that the cylinder's out of the way, let's tension off that cam chain with a little bungee and take a look at that junky piston. Now before we go any further, I just want to let everybody know that I'm by no means a professional mechanic, and this is my first engine rebuild ever, so even though I'm going to try to get every step of the top end rebuild process during this build series, please don't take these videos as how-to videos. They're more of a how I did it type of video, and the reason I'm making them is to use as a reference the next time I rebuild one of these things, so I don't have to bug my dad every 30 seconds with all these stupid questions. So please, if I'm doing something wrong or if I missed anything in the videos, please feel to correct me or lay into me in the comments. Totally cool, I'm not going to take it personally, and the more information that we get in the comments, the more it'll help me out and it'll help other folks at home. So please fire away. Now if you do want to watch some videos from a guy with a ton of Honda experience and mechanical knowledge, I'd recommend you check out the channel MRC Builds here on YouTube. The dude's got a lot of technical as well as funny videos over there, so be sure to check him out sometime. And that's obviously after you subscribe to my channel and watch all my videos and like all my videos and have all your friends do the same, obviously. But seriously, if you want to get some three-wheeler knowledge dropped on you, he's someone you gotta check out. So just search for MRC_builds. Now I know I'm a total noob, but I don't think there's supposed to be that much play in that compression ring. So let's take this wrist pin clip off of one side of the piston, pull the wrist pin and the piston out, and do a little inspection. Well, there's your problem right there. Don't think you're supposed to have an 1.5 inch ring gap on these things. Could be wrong though. And here's another one of those guide pins I was talking about on the bottom of the head. And this one's got a rubber gasket on it. You gotta be really sure to put it back in the right place when you reassemble the engine, or you're gonna have a really, really oily floor when you fire the engine up. Again, ask me how I know. Stop being silly, dude. That valve cap is seized on and you're using an American wrench. Go get the right tool for the job, you big dummy head. Now let's take these 3 panhead screws off and remove the rocker arm cover. And once that's off, we can remove the gasket, pull the rocker arms out, and see how they look. Pretty sure they're going to look like brand new. The rocker shafts pull out really easily if you got a magnet, but the rockers themselves can be a little tricky. There's not a lot of space to work with at the opening in the top of the head, but with a little fiddling here and there, they'll eventually come out. And now let's get the spark plug and intake out of the way, and we can work on disassembling the valves. You're going to need a valve spring compressor tool to take apart the valves. I'm pretty sure you can get a loaner tool at your local parts store if needed. Just be sure to stick a magnet on the little cotter valve retainer thingies when you're compressing the valves so they don't get dropped and go flying across the floor. And once the 2 little cotter things are out, the spring retainer plate and 2 springs should drop right out, and at that point, you can flip the head over and push the valve out of the head. And the other valve should be just the same, so just repeat the same process for the other side. One thing that's a little different from side to side on the 110s is that there's this little valve cap and seal on the exhaust valve only, so make sure you put it on the correct side when you're reassembling the engine. And now the last parts of these little valve seats on both sides, just use a little pick or a magnet to get them out and you're good to go. While I'm cleaning all the old gaskets off the head, if any pros out there notice something that I missed during the disassembly, please let us know in the comments. I tried my best to include everything, but since I'm still a noob, I'm sure I missed something. For everyone else thinking about doing a top-end rebuild on one of these guys, I definitely recommend getting a service manual, but you can also search the Googles and find all kinds of these nice exploded parts diagrams like these. Let's say you're working on a 1983 ATC 110. Just go online and search for 1983 Honda ATC 110 parts list. There's all kinds of websites out there with blown up diagrams like this, as well as all the part numbers of every component. I usually just pop the name or part of whatever I need in Google or eBay and have good luck finding pretty much everything. So while the head is cooking in the ultrasonic cleaner, I'm going to get the new piston assembled so we can get this thing back together. But that's going to have to wait until next time, so be sure to subscribe by clicking the Bigfoot logo here. And if you need something to tide you over until next week, you can click the video on the left if you want to check out last week's video, or you can click on the right and check out another one of my fun builds. See y'all next week.